Hi, everyone, and welcome back in to our second edition of the Sun Devil Source video podcast. We have some staff predictions and a season preview as we're just a few days away from that season opener where ASU will take on NAU back at Mountain America Stadium. We have the whole crew on this podcast. I think this is everyone being seen for the first time as a group all together. So if you haven't seen all six of us wandering around a football field at some point, here we all are. Gabby Chernoff and Chris Cartman were obviously here every time, so you get to see more of us, I guess. But my fellow MMJ, Jacob Brooks, you've seen his work, I'm sure, all over Twitter and Instagram, alter ego JB Fantasy. So Jacob, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me, Gabby. This is my first time coming on the podcast, like you said, and I'm really excited for it. I'm glad that we all get to be here together.
If you need any fantasy football advice, Jacob's your guy. Joaquin Rodriguez, he's one of our writers, also making his debut. I'm sure you've read a lot of his work. Very talented writer. Joaquin, welcome to the pod.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited to get the season going. It's going to be a good year. Good coverage.
And his bestie, as I like to think of them, Luke Lendler. He's another one of our writers. I'm sure you've all read his stuff as well. Luke, welcome.
Oh, I'm really happy to be here. You know, Jacob and Gabby are always on camera. Chris is always on camera. I had to get a haircut for this special occasion. I'm happy to be here.
Looks great, Luke. And then Jake Sloan, you heard from him in our Unfiltered podcast on the way back from Camp T. So it's podcast number 2 for you, Jake. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back. Good to make my facial debut.
Yes, like I said, now everybody's seeing our faces. So if you're reading stuff or you only listen to our podcast, now you can put a face to the name. So here we all are. We're going to get right into it, starting off first, Chris. Team health, they stayed very healthy throughout all of preseason camp. And then your, as I like to call it, your famous Hot 11. All the fans, all the subscribers really enjoy your Hot 11. So if you could just give us a little bit of insight on the team's health at this point, heading into game week 1, as well as your final Hot 11.
Yeah, the only major injury, Mykeel Gardner, D tackle transfer from Oregon, is going to be out for the season with the torn Achilles. He had been coming back from rehabbing another injury and was battling for maybe a spot in the rotation at a deep position. Probably won't be a big loss for ASU. Ben Coleman and Jamedo Abigbo both came back from ruptured Achilles tendons and are starting this year on ASU's offensive line. So Gardner should be able to come back from that next year. AJ Ia banged up a little bit in Saturday's practice, and he may not be able to go against NAU, but really this is a very healthy team overall going into the season opener. And then the Hot 11, we have 7 newcomers. Crew Jackson is somebody that I highlighted as one of ASU's most improved players. He's probably not going to start or be in the 2D, but nevertheless, he was undeterred and he worked really hard, and he probably would be playing a lot for many teams out there. Just ASU so deep at linebacker. We also saw Wade Helton transfer from Iowa State do a good job as ASU looked at its alternate options to starting Ben Coleman at center, just a redshirt freshman, but had really good poise and snapping and seemed to have wherewithal both in pass protection and in the run game. But ASU decided to go with Ben Coleman at center to start at the outset of the season. Some other guys that were in the Hot 11 in prior weeks are still there, but Montana Warren is a guy that I think everybody should know, probably going to be starting at nickel here at the outset of the season. That's an important position, replacing Shamari Simmons, and he's done quite well over the last week and a half to 2 weeks or so at the only position that could have conceivably been a drop-off defensively. It's a very impressive defense, and I think ASU fans are going to see that right from the outset against NAU on Saturday.
Well, Chris, I also can't help but notice some of the artwork behind you, a little bit of a revamped background from our first video podcast. I have a Cam Scadaboo picture. I see a little Pat Tillman one, as well as the Camp Tontozona tower, water tower outside there. So can you give us a little bit of insight as to the art that we're seeing behind you?
Yeah, so Christopher Roach is a really talented local artist. I've known him for some years now. He's been a member of the Devil Sanctuary for quite a long time. He does a lot of ASU art. The Camp Tontozona original on acrylic behind me is for sale if people want to take a look at that. The water tower, to me, that's like a special thing. Seeing that every year when we go up to Camp Tonizona, it just kind of marks the next phase, the next year of ASU athletics, and it's a beautiful setting and a beautiful piece. Camp Scalaboo, the original of the one that's behind me, sold, but there's still limited edition prints that are available in different sizes. Like, that's probably one of the most popular ASU players in recent history, of course. And I have the Jill Mary and Pat Tillman. There's different sizes. You should just, if you're interested, go check out his work at ChristopherRoachArt.com. He also has not just ASU athletics paintings, but he has some Arizona iconic depictions of famous scenery and neon page that has a lot of really impressive works. And this is somebody who donates to the Sun Angel Collective and is a super diehard ASU person. And so if you're looking to spruce up your walls, and support ASU athletics, get some things that are different than what you typically see out there, that'd be one that I would suggest to go peruse at his website.
Well, thank you, Christopher, for helping zhuzh up Chris's background. It's all beautiful art, and if you're a Sun Devil fan, you should definitely go check it out. It's a very sophisticated way to add some ASU decor into your home. But without further ado, we're going to get started here in just a second after a quick video from our sponsors. We want to thank Jones Auto Centers again for your partnership and helping us present this podcast, and we'll be back with our predictions in just a bit. All right, without further ado, it's the season preview podcast, and this is always a fun one, the source staff prediction. So the way this is going to work, we're going to go through a bunch of different stat categories and kind of just general ideas of things that we've seen through camp and things that we think might happen. We're going to go through, everyone on staff is going to share their predictions, kind of say why they think what they think. So yeah, let's get started. We're going to start with you, Jacob. So first one on the agenda, what are two things that impressed you about ASU's team in August and throughout preseason camp?
Yeah, Gabby, the two things that impressed me the most, the first one will be explosive plays. Kenny has talked numerous times in his post-practice availabilities about how he wants more explosive plays, and he's been getting them. A guy like Jaron Hamilton has stood out to me, as well as Jalen Moss making some plays down the field. And the second thing that stood out to me has been just the togetherness of this team. The Pat Tillman Leadership Council was officially posted today, and it feels like those guys have really made an impact, that everybody from the top to the bottom of the depth chart is rooting for each other. There's competition at spots like running back and nickel, but those guys are all still cheering for each other, and it's a really cool sight to see.
Yeah, I'm going after that. Number one, the explosiveness really stood out to me. That was really clear from the get-go and probably from early August to Camp T. And the second being the tight end depth. I mean, ASU brought back an all-conference tight end, Shamama Taylor, lost a guy to the portal back to Florida State in Jaden Fortier, but along the way they brought in Kamari Anderson, an athletic, explosive, long tight end from Kentucky, and he's just really impressed up to this point.
I wanted to echo what Jacob was saying about the team culture. I think that's really stood out to me throughout August. There's been a lot of teams like ASU that have been in similar positions to ASU that have kind of fallen off a cliff after their one big year. So this seems to be a little bit different, at least in terms of the culture that Dillingham presents, especially in his post-practice availabilities. There's an authenticity about his team. And also on the field, the pass rush is bigger, stronger, and faster, and could have some big things in store this season. It's been very impressive so far this offseason.
I'm right there with you, Luke, with the pass rush. I feel like almost every play there's some pressure, some sack, tackle for loss, and during the team's 11 on 11 periods. And I think that after the year that they had last year, the consensus was that they wanted to increase their pass rush, get to the quarterback more often. And the second thing that's really impressed me has been the kicking. They brought in Jesus Gomez from Eastern Michigan, and it feels like all of his kicks are either going to go in or they're going to be good misses, as Kenny Dillingham put it. And they all have an opportunity to be good from 50, maybe even 55 yards if he gets a good leg on it.
Yeah, I think special teams improvement definitely stood out to me between Jesus Gomez and what he should be able to bring to the kicking game. Matt McKenzie's addition as a punter, I think that pushed Canyon Floyd. Should be better return capability with Raleek Brown, and a better overall core special teams, probably, I would say. And then the defensive front's physicality and its ability to impact the quarterback, or at least play into the backfield with a lot of consistency against an offensive line that returned 4 starters. That was, I think, very intriguing about the prospects for this team. I also would echo what Jake said about leadership. And then one thing I think that Joaquin maybe misspoke on was that Marquiston Douglas transferred to Florida State. And that's who they hope to have be kind of replaced in there by Kamari Anderson. AJ Ia, as I said earlier, might not be ready to go for the outset, but is a 4th tight end who in a lot of years would be in the 2 deep or maybe 3rd, but ASU so deep that he's probably not going to be needed.
Yeah, I think for me, the pass rush definitely stood out to me as well after they maybe weren't doing exactly what they wanted to be doing on that front last year. I remember I talked to, I think it was CJ Fight in the spring, and I asked him about, what are your goals for your pass rush and for getting to the quarterback? And he said, if you chase those kinds of things, Coach Reynolds always tells us they'll run away just like girls. So I thought that was kind of funny. That's something I still remember now. And then the tight ends as well. I mean, Chris, we've talked about on the podcast, and you guys have written articles about it too, just how deep this tight end room really is. It's been really cool to kind of see them utilizing more tight end heavy personnel groupings. So that's something that has definitely impressed me a lot. And I think it'll be really exciting to see that tight end group get out onto the field this Saturday. So on the flip side of things, we're going to go with 2 things that were potentially concerning about the team this past month or so.
Yeah, the first thing for me that was a little bit concerning was the O-line play. The storyline throughout all of the spring and the fall has been Ben Coleman moving to center. Can he repeat the production that ASU got from Leaf last year? I think in the Camp T scrimmage specifically, he had a couple snaps that didn't look super great to me. That worried me. The second thing that's been worrying me has been the out-of-structure offense for ASU. It seems like we all know Jordan Tyson, he can get open and find those soft spots in the zone when things kind of collapse. Leavitt, he can extend plays with his legs, but it seems like the other receivers haven't been winning against the DBs in those types of situations too often. So that's worried me a little bit.
Yeah, for me, 2 things that really stood out to me in August early was 1, the trouble tackling. Kenny spoke about how he expected for there to be trouble tackling, but it kind of lingered longer than he probably hoped. There led to a lot of explosive plays from the receiving core, which was just a factor that Kenny really doesn't want to see. I think that was why he emphasized the need of explosiveness and grit you want to see from his defense. And going off of Brooks, the O-line really stood out. Ben Coleman had a few loose snaps here and there before officially being named the starter. So it was just a position battle that grew longer than they probably would have hoped.
Yeah, similarly to what my colleagues have said, I thought the offensive line looked like a point of not necessarily weakness, but maybe a little bit of concern heading into the season. Right behind that offensive line, by no means did Sam Leavitt have a bad camp, but I thought the quarterback had some consistency struggles that at least raised my eyebrows for a couple of practices. There were some layup throws on like deep posts and deep outs that we saw him make a lot at the end of last year that he missed on some practices. And there's kind of this assumed leap he would take that haven't fully seen yet. Not saying he had a bad camp by any stretch of the imagination, but there were some consistency issues that definitely raised my eyebrows with Leavitt.
If I didn't know any better, I think we're all sharing the same notes, because I also have the offensive line is just a bit of a concern when you return 4 or 5 stars, but that most important starter being the center, he's the guy that makes everything go. I think Ben Coleman has done very well in his progression as a snapper, but I think there, like you guys have said, there have been a couple snaps that are inaccurate. And the second part is, sticking with the snapping game, is the long snapping. ASU brought in Cade Davis as a transfer to give Tyler Wigglesworth a bit of competition. And I think Cade Davis, he's been taking first team reps for a majority of preseason camp. And especially in today's practice, we saw a couple inaccurate snaps that were a little high for Canyon Floyd. So I think that might be something to watch out for.
I think you guys have touched on the most salient points here. replacing a center, especially an all-conference player, Lee Faltani, that's a big deal. Center's touching the ball every snap, communicating with the rest of the line and everybody else about protections, working with Sam Leavitt. You need to be on point there. So that's probably the biggest focal concern that I would say for ASU going into the season. A couple weeks ago, I probably would have said nickel, but the play of Kendrick Breedlove and Montana Warren has alleviated that, I think, to a large degree. And I'm going to agree with Luke. I think that Sam Leavitt, this is a double-edged thing because Sam Leavitt probably threw too many Jeopardy balls in camp for what you would expect of a Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback, right? But also, it's tough to measure that because ASU's defense is so good, like one of the best defenses that I've seen in a long time around ASU, and doing a great job getting pressure and coverage. And I think that there's probably some balls that Leavitt's throwing in practice where he wouldn't throw them and he probably would just run. And that is hard to exactly sort of pinpoint how many of those and to what degree. So those are the two things I'd watch for. Defensively, this team looks really good. Special teams, I don't disagree with Jake, but I also think that that's still going to be an improved group.
Yeah, we all kind of sound like broken records here, but I wrote down the offensive line, namely that center position too. Obviously, Ben Coleman was recently named the starting center, but replacing a guy like Lee Fautanu can just pose a lot of challenges as far as the rhythm of the O-line being in sync and then being in sync with the quarterback as well. But I talked to Ben Coleman today, actually kind of asked him about that, and he said that he thinks the rhythm is good. The O-line does a lot of kind of bonding stuff outside of practice, and so they have a lot of trust and one another. So that would be kind of refreshing to hear, I feel like, if you're an ASU fan. And then I don't remember exactly who mentioned the wide receivers, but I think that wide receiver 2 spot specifically, there have been instances in camp, and I know a big talk of, I think it was towards the end of spring, was, who's going to be the wide receiver 2. Jordan Tyson can't do everything. And there have been moments just throughout camp and some of the scrimmages where Hines Ward has been kind of yelling at his guys, like, who's going to step up, who's going to take this rep? JT can't do everything. So I think that wide receiver 2 spot might raise a little bit of questions. At least it did for me throughout this camp. But next, Chris, this one's just for you. Your thoughts on special teams. You touched on it briefly earlier. Kenny said they should be much improved. Jake, you talked about Jesus Gomez, but what are your overall thoughts on the special teams?
Well, it was just so poor last year in a lot of respects, other than Milquan Stovall being able to reliably field punts and not giving up a bunch of big returns. Like, those were things that were not weaknesses. So I don't want to be completely negative, but the inability to flip the field with a freshman punter was a major problem for ASU. There were not nearly enough opportunities that were capitalized on where you could have had 50+ yard punts, and instead you ended up with sub 40-yard punts. And then that also carried through to the pin punting. Not a lot of fair catches inside the 20, nearly as many as there should have been. And I think for Canyon Floyd, what we've seen is his leg strength is plenty good enough, but there's been inconsistencies with his drop that he's had to work through. And I think he's been better, but still not consistent enough throughout all these practices to know what they're reliably going to get there. And that's why we may see some more Australian rules, rugby style punting, where you can chase some guys downfield more to get your gunners in position, and also gives you some more flexibility to cross-field punts, trick plays like we saw against Texas when Floyd had the nice pass to Blazin Lona Wong. Jesus Gomez I would be surprised if he's not one of the better kickers in the Big 12 and potentially even in the country. I think he has an NFL caliber leg. We've seen numerous kicks of well beyond 50 yards, 55 or more yards. They've given him opportunities to kick from 60, I think 63 yards one time, which I was blown away by. And again, I just want to highlight that Raleek Brown is somebody that has that dynamic twitch, but also is a stocky build. He's somebody that could be a very intriguing punt returner, but some of these punts have come down a little bit too on top of him. So let's see what happens against NAU and early in the season if there's any sort of issues with fielding punts while he's moving forward, as opposed to having that come down on his shoulder pads or near his face mask, because that's the thing that you really want to avoid.
All right, back now to the questions for the entire class. What will ASU's best national statistical categories by ranking, 2 to 3, and then worst national statistic categories? Give us one or two of those. Jacob, go ahead.
Yeah, the first stat that I think will be good for ASU is going to be fourth down conversion percentage. Just 2 days ago in his Monday press conference, Kenny was talking about how the ASU is going to stay aggressive. ASU, that's their mindset. That's their mentality. That's the team that they want to be. I also think another good stat is going to be defensive third down stop percentage, just because Brian Ward has mentioned he thinks this is the best defense he's ever had. And there are so many guys Chris has talked about on the board that are in the 2 deep, the 3 deep, that could start at other places. And I think having that depth is going to keep guys fresh. And I think that will help the team get people off on third downs. I think some of the worst stats that ASU will have will be the pass blocking. I think that the pocket is going to collapse on Leavitt more than he likes, especially with what we've been talking about over and over again at that center spot. And then maybe some botched snaps. I could also see that happening as well.
Yeah, going after my colleague Brooks, the two things that I think are not worrisome but could be on the low end side of the team is pass blocking. I think junior alignment to the roster, to the starting five, Jameto Bigbo transfer, had an injury last year at Texas State, missed the whole second half of the season. I think he's a little bit of a question to fill that left guard role that was filled by Ben Coleman last year, an all-conference left guard last year. In terms of some of the good things, I think tackles for loss. I mean, the entire roster has talked about how strong this defensive line has been. They think they're some of the best in the country. Talked to some of the guys today. So just really high expectations for that defensive front to get pressure on the quarterback and get those tackles behind the line of scrimmage.
I agree about the tackles for loss, especially because of how much of an emphasis that the coaches have placed on that. On the other side of the ball, Dillingham has placed a lot of emphasis on explosive plays, and I think we could really see a real flip from this offense that really didn't pick up a lot of explosive last year to suddenly a downfield attacking team. Dillingham and Arroyo have mentioned they want to rely on Leavitt's arm down the field a lot. They have newcomers in Moss and Hamilton who can really stretch the field vertically and up the seams. I think those are two guys who could really lead to more explosives. On the flip side, stats they could struggle at. I mean, forced fumbles. You look at a team that only forced 6 fumbles last year. Now 4 of those forced fumbles are leaving with Shamari Simmons. They're a team that had a lot of interceptions last season, but when it came to getting balls on the ground and then scooping them up, they really didn't succeed at the highest level, and I could see that possibly continuing again this year.
Jacob, it's funny you mentioned the fourth down conversion percentage, because I have one of the best rankings being fourth down conversions, just numbers wise, because last year they were in the low to mid 50s percentage wise, but they were so aggressive, like you said, that Kenny wants to be, that they converted so many of them. And I think with the upgraded 12 and 13 personnel possibilities, those 4th and 2, 4th and 3s that are maybe even on their own 40, Kenny Dillingham may much more likely want to go for those fourth downs with his confidence in his offensive linemen and his tight ends. Another statistical category I think they'll do really well in is the turnover ratio. Kenny Dillingham last year made such a high emphasis on it that I think this year they'll continue to do that even without someone like Scadaboo, who is so good at protecting the ball. I think Kyson Brown, Raleek Brown, and Kanye Udo all have that same type of mentality to them where they know to put 2 hands on the ball at all times, and they'll take care of the ball very well. On the flip side, I still think the net punting will be one of their worst rankings for the team. I don't think it'll be that low nationally, but I just think Kenyon Floyd still has a little bit of progression to do. Like Chris said, some of his punts looked a little shaky at times, and I think that may hurt him.
Yeah, I think I'm surprised nobody mentioned run defense. I think ASU will be one of the national leaders in run defense when you have almost everybody back from a team that led the Big 12, right, in that category. So top 20 or so would be expected in that regard. And then I agree with turnover margin. We haven't seen ASU's running backs fumble the ball, top running backs in camp. Sam Leavitt should not regress to the point where he's throwing more interceptions than he did a year ago. And ASU probably should generate more takeaways than it did a year ago. So you put that together, and ASU was already first in the Big 12 last year in turnover margin. That should improve overall. And on the negative side, I agree. Net punting would probably be something that is on the low end. And then a potential second thing would be third down conversion defense. I think ASU struggled with that last year, getting off the field when it had plenty of opportunities to do so. I think that the team's going to be better at that, and there probably won't be any truly bad categories on offense or defense with this team. But just given that they'll probably be better and very stout on first, second downs, and probably play ahead in a lot of games this year, you're going to see teams needing to throw the ball a lot, and especially on third downs. And that is where there is some susceptibility, if at all, though I do think that ASU secondary is improving.
Yeah, I had fourth down conversions as well. One of the pillars of, I guess, identity for this team is that aggression that you kind of mentioned previously, Jacob. So when you have a head coach that's kind of preaching that message, and then I think talking to Sam Leavitt less than a week ago, he kind of said the same thing. Like, this is our brand, this is our identity of football. So that'll translate well into a high fourth down conversion rate. I mean, and then you have a guy like Marcus Arroyo running the offense. We saw in the Big 12 championship, it was a 4th and 1, and his play call was just to send that ball. Sam Leavitt send that ball all the way down the field, and they converted on that one. So I'm sure there's a lot more aggressive plays in store, especially on first downs for Marcus Arroyo and the offense. I have TFLs as well. You combine that aggression with a really strong defense that's returning most of its guys. I think that'll be a really strong category for ASU this year as well. And then Jake and Chris, what you said about the punting, I would tend to agree with that. As far as the worst national statistical categories, you mentioned those kind of inconsistencies with Canyon Floyd's drops, and then they brought in Matt McKenzie to kind of compete with him at that position. So maybe just a little bit of wavering, and that might not be where they want it to be this year. Our next prediction, Sam Leavitt, Tempe's favorite quarterback, QB10, just his stats, performance, how do we think he'll do? And then will this be his last season at Arizona State before going to the NFL draft?
Yeah, Gabby, when it comes to this one, I'm an optimist. I think that Leavitt will take that leap into a Heisman candidate that many are expecting him to take, and I think this will be his last season in Tempe, as he will declare for the NFL draft and be a worthy first-round pick. As for his official stats, I have 3,700 passing yards, which would put him as one of the best passers in ASU history, as well as 30 passing touchdowns, which would tie him for the single-season school record. I had 7 interceptions, 570 rushing yards, and 6 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, so I have the exact same touchdown total at 30. I predict Sam Leavitt to go 3,100 yards on the season. I think ASU has a chance to get out early in a lot of its games and not need Sam Leavitt to throw down the field and really go for those explosive plays. And 3,100 yards would put him at 8th all-time in ASU's all-time passing yards leader. So high status to be in. And yeah, I expect him to go to the draft. This is a deep, loaded quarterback class. Scouts have been raving about this class for 2 years now. But I think if Sam Leavitt continues to progress the way he has these past year, I think he's a shoo-in to go to the draft.
Yeah, last year, 2,800 yards, 24 passing touchdowns. I think he increases both of those numbers. I have him at 3,700 passing yards on the season. I think his touchdowns, he just breaks that record by 1. I think he gets 31 touchdowns on the season. I have his interceptions up from 6 to 10. I think he's going to try to be a little bit more aggressive and maybe show off a little bit compared to last year. He's going to be kind of given a lot more free reign in Arroyo's offense. I have his QBR dropping a little bit. It was the 6th most efficient in the country last year. I think he's going to be asked to do a lot more. Again, last year he missed a game. He went over 30 attempts just 3 times. This is going to be a different offense this year. He's going to have a lot more control. And so I think that could lead to bigger numbers kind of in the positive and the negative for Leavitt.
I agree with you, Luke, about Leavitt being more aggressive and being the guy in this offense. I have him finishing with 3,400 passing yards, with 28 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. And then I have him adding 500 rushing yards and another 3 touchdowns on the ground. I don't have an answer of whether or not he'll go in the draft. I was really teeter-tottering on both sides. I think this is a really stacked draft class. And I think it honestly depends on ASU's team success. Sam Leavitt seems like a guy who, if they come really close to another Peach Bowl appearance or a college football playoff appearance, I think he may want to run it back one more year and then have someone like Arch Manning as the only other quarterback to compete for a draft.
Yeah, some good thoughts there. I think if he averages 30 or 40 more yards passing per game, I think that's kind of like a good barometer of what we would expect. And we'll see if he plays in every game, right? That's not by no means a shoo-in, but assuming that he does, I think a 3,400 type of a number seems very achievable. I think he'll throw for 30 touchdowns or so. I think the most important thing to watch here is he going to be able to maintain a 4-to-1 rate of touchdowns, interceptions? Like that is a very important barometer, I think, for ASU's success this season. It was remarkable that he only threw 6 interceptions last year in his first year as a starter, playing 13 games, right? And will he go pro? I think that is a very 50-50 decision. And I say that because primarily it's a very talented, deep NFL draft class among quarterbacks where you have 4 to 6 other guys that would be considered to be roughly in that consideration for first round standing. And there's a massive difference financially between being a top 10 pick or top 15 versus somebody who slips into the top part of the second round. And when you're Sam Leavitt and you have the ability to return and play another year of college and still only be a junior eligibility wise and boost that stock and make a lot more money, when you also from a revenue sharing standpoint would probably be making somewhere on the order of $1 million to $1.5 million. That makes it a little bit of a more difficult decision. So I think if ASU has on the high end of its potential this season and Leavitt also does, then yeah, he probably goes.
I'm kind of in the same range as far as passing yards as a lot of you guys. I have about 3,300 and then 31 touchdowns. I think he'll rush in 5 of those, and then I have him at 7 interceptions. I like what you said, Chris, about how, yeah, he could have a stellar season, but financially with a competitive draft class amongst quarterbacks, that can play a big factor into whether he decides to go pro or not. I think he will have a Heisman campaign season. So with that, I do think he will go to the draft at the end of this year. There's been a lot of mock drafts where you've seen him going in the first round alongside Jordan Tyson. The two of them both projected first round picks whenever it is Leavitt does decide to go pro. And I do think this will be his last season at ASU. All right. Now for a few other stats and predictions. Who will lead ASU in carries, in rushing yards, and in touchdowns? And then who will be second in all of those categories?
Yeah, for me, I have Kyson Brown leading ASU in all 3 of those rushing categories. I think that as much as ASU has been praising that this is going to be a running back by committee approach with Kyson Brown, Raleek Brown, and Kanye Udoh, you need a guy who, when the moment gets tough, you can count on them. That's what Scat was last year. And that's what I think Kyson Brown is going to be this year. I think second is going to be split between Raleek Brown and Kanye Udoh. I think Kanye will be second in carries and rushing yards, but I think that Raleek Brown will be second in touchdowns if we're just going off of total touchdowns, just because of what he can bring in the passing game.
Jacob, what about stats for Kyson Brown?
For Kyson Brown, I would probably say around 900 yards. I would say 9 touchdowns.
Yeah, so going after that, I expect Kyson to lead in the first 3 categories: rushing yards, attempts, and touchdowns. Now, in that second category, I expect Raleek to carry the rushing and attempt stat, but I think Kanye Udoh can bring in that touchdown second place spot per se, just because I think he's such a threat in the red zone, getting downhill, being a bruising running back that he is. So I expect Kanye Udoh to take that spot as second most touchdowns. Then for Kyson Brown's stats, I have him in the 850-yard range with 10 touchdowns, somewhere along those lines. I think is a realistic outcome for the way he's been playing all preseason.
Yeah, looking at all the rushing touchdowns they had last year with Scattaboo and Leavitt combined, kind of tried to rejigger those numbers and make them line up with the current room. So I have Kyson Brown running for 950 yards and scoring 11 touchdowns. I initially thought it was kind of high, but I thought about it some more, and I'm going to stick to my number. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Leavitt was second in rushing touchdowns. He had 5 last year. I have him up at 6 with Udoh having 7. I think Udoh will have more attempts and touchdowns than Raleek Brown, but I could see Raleek Brown picking up more yards just because I think he has more big play potential and probably more yards per carrier potential. It seems like Kanye Udoh is mostly just being utilized on these short yard situations to kind of punch it in. Similar in the NFL to how the Lions had DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams one year, where Swift had basically all the yards and Udo had all the touchdowns. Then we kind of see a sort of balance like that between Kyson Brown and Kanye Udo this year.
To piggyback off of that, I have also Kyson Brown, the leading rusher, somewhere in the 150 to 175 carries, and then in the 750-yard range with only 6 touchdowns. I think Kanye Udo is going to finish second, get around 75 carries, but only get 400 yards because he's that back that's probably going to be in the short yardage situation. But I have him leading all ASU rushers with 10 touchdowns. I think he's going to be that goal line back where if they get first and goal, second and goal inside the 5, they're just going to stack the box with a bunch of tight ends, and Kanye Udo is just going to bulldoze his way through. But after seeing how many rushing touchdowns ASU had last year, I think it's definitely going to take a step back just because of how many weapons they have on offense this year. We're going to see a lot more tight end and wide receiver looks in the end zone outside of Jordan Tyson and Shimon Mateer. So I think that will take a little bit of a hit to the running backs' touchdown numbers.
Yeah, I think similar to a lot of you guys, I think Kyson Brown will probably end up leading ASU in rushing yards and rushing attempts, maybe around 800 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns, I'm going to say. And I agree that you could very well see Kanye Udo take a lot of the short yardage goal line situation carries and be close in the touchdown number to what Kyson Brown does. But Malik Brown is going to get plenty of opportunities, assuming that he's able to stay healthy because of the kind of injury issues he's had in the past. But this is probably the smallest gap that we've seen between 1 and 2 or 1 and 3 even in all of Sean Aguano's tenure. He's consistently produced 1,000-yard running backs. And there's going to be some games this year where someone other than the primary starter is hot in some of these games, and they give the ball to that guy more than they otherwise would, just given the closeness of the position. And that's why I don't think you're going to see any one player soak up enough carries to garner that 1,000-yard mark.
Yeah, I also have a Kyson Brown leading in all those categories. I have him at about 800 rushing yards, and the nine touchdowns is what I'm going with. Luke, I like what you said, because I had this too about Sam Leavitt being second in rushing. I think with the amount he scrambles and just the way he kind of likes to, run the ball and rush, it's not insane to say that. So I like what you said there. I had that down in my notes too. And then Kanye Udo second in the other categories of carries and touchdowns. So yeah. All right. Next, Jordan Tyson, Sam Leavitt's counterpart. How many receiving yards and touchdowns for him? And then I talked about the wide receiver too earlier. So who do we think will be second in receiving yards and receptions?
Yeah, Gabby, for me, when I look at Tyson, over the last 6 weeks of last season, he led the country in receiving yards with 729. Over a full season's pace, that would have been nearly 1,500 yards. I think he gets close to that. I charted him for 1,320 yards and 13 touchdowns. He cements himself as a surefire first-round pick. Second on the team in receiving yards, I think, will be Jaron Hamilton because of his big playability, but I don't think he'll be second on the team in receptions. I think that will be Jalen Moss.
Yeah, so I expect to see a jump from Jordan Tyson in receiving yards and touchdowns. He had 1,100 yards last year with 75 receptions and 10 touchdowns. I expect to see a jump in every one of those categories. I think we can see somewhere in the 1,300 range, like Brooks was saying. In receiving yards, I expect 85-plus receptions. And then in the touchdowns, I expect 13 to 15, I think is very realistic. Then in terms of second, just like Brooks, I think Jaron Hamilton's going to lead in receiving yards after Jordan Tyson. And then I expect to see Malik McClain kind of carrying that second touchdown receiving role.
Similar to a lot of people, I am just blown away by what we've seen from Tyson in this offseason. I think he could go for around 1,400 yards next year is kind of where I had him projected. I actually think his touchdowns might drop. It feels like a lot of times we see these guys explode in yards and see their touchdowns kind of drop simply because of the amount of attention that will be heading his way in the red zone and the other weapons that ASU has in those kind of situations where you need to get really creative with your play calling. Jake talked about it a while ago, more tight end looks, the end zone, 13 personnel, stuff of that nature. Behind Tyson, I have Jalen Moss with around 500 yards. I didn't try to overthink this one. Hamilton has been very good throughout camp, but he's still in his first year in the system. He really hasn't gotten a lot of playing time at the college level yet. He is a very, very talented receiver and is absolutely probably next up behind Tyson in this offense. But at least for this season, I'm going to lean with the more vested veteran in Moss, have him second in yards and touchdowns. I have him around 500.
Luke, I'm right there with you I think Hamilton is going to take that jump next year. I think this year, though, it'll be the veterans leading the way. I have Jordan Tyson finishing with 80 catches, 1,250 yards, and 10 touchdowns. And then behind him, I think Moss is going to be really reliable in the slot, finishing with 55 catches, about 650 yards, and four touchdowns, which I think is going to be third on the team. I think Shimon Mateer is going to finish with one or two more touchdowns just because of the safety blanket that he can be for Sam Leavitt in the red zone. I think they're going to utilize a lot of play action in the red zone, put a lot of 12 and 13 personnel in there.
Just to kind of set expectations here, Sean McDonald's best wide receiver season in ASU history was 87 catches for 1,405 yards in 2002. And so some of the things you guys are talking about they're right there, or they're threatening that. And I agree. I think Jordan Tyson looks like maybe the best wide receiver that I've seen at ASU maybe ever. Certainly I remember Sean McDonald. He had a monster season getting behind the defense with Andrew Walter's big arm, throwing the big plays to him. I think Jordan Tyson is a better upside player. He's bigger. He is more dynamic. His catch radius is tremendous. The game is slow for him. There have been a few drops in practice in the last few weeks that I think we got to watch, and that's something that NFL scouts are going to pay close attention to, right? But my guess is he ends up with somewhere around 1,300 yards, like a lot of you guys have said, and maybe 12 or 13 touchdowns, which is a couple off of the record all time at ASU. And we're going to be in record watch for much of the season with the pace that he's going to put out there. And I think Malik McClain is who I'm going to go with for the second highest receiving yards and receptions. I think it's very close. We're probably going to see McClain and Moss and Jaron Hamilton and Shimon Mateer all probably within about 10 to 15 catches of one another is my guess. But I think that McClain's going to be on the field a lot. They take that slot receiver off when they go to 12 personnel. They'll probably play more 12 this year. And that coupled with the way that ASU and Marcus Arroyo will move Jordan Tyson around the formation creatively is why I'm going to say that Malik McClain will be second, maybe somewhere around low 40s in catches and might have around 600 receiving yards, something like that.
Yeah, with Jordan Tyson, I mean, and the departure of Cam Scadaboo, you got to make up for that offense somehow, and it's not all that offense. Offensive production isn't going to come from just the running backs. None of those running backs are going to produce like Scadaboo did. So I think the brunt of it is going to come from that production between Sam Leavitt and Jordan Tyson. So for Tyson, I have him about 1,300 yards and 13 touchdowns. I think behind him in receiving yards will be Jalen Moss. And then Jake, I think you said this, but behind Tyson in receptions. Oh my goodness, excuse me. I have Shimon Mateer. Like we talked about, they're utilizing a lot more kind of 13 personnel, very tight end heavy stuff. And he is kind of a safety blanket for Leavitt. They played together last year in a very deep tight end room. He's the tight end one. So I definitely see him being second in receptions behind Jordan Tyson. All right. Next one. Which offensive players will be all Big 12 first or second team on ASU this upcoming year?
For me, I think that Sam Leavitt and Jordan Tyson are both pretty clearly at this point. They seem like if they stay healthy, locks to end up on the all Big 12 first team potentially. I think that there are a lot of talented quarterbacks in the Big 12, but I think Leavitt will end up on the first team. I think that Shimon Mateer will also end up on the first team as well at that tight end spot, not only because of his receiving production, but because of his blocking. Kenny Dillingham has raved about his blocking abilities. And then my big hot take here is that I don't know if he'll make it, but I think that Jaron Hamilton will make a push to potentially end up on the all Big 12 second team.
Yeah, tagging on to that, I had the exact same trio of players make the first team in Jordan Tyson, Sam Leavitt, and Shimon Mateer. But on the second team, I have Kyson Brown making the second team. I think just with the way the offense is going to roll, I think he has a chance to produce to a level of to earn some recognition, maybe even an honorable mention. But I think there's a second team possibility in that.
I also have Leavitt and Tyson on the first team. I think Shimon Mateer could absolutely make the first team, but if we're talking about a guy that's made two first team all conferences or two all conference teams back-to-back years, you're suddenly looking at a guy that could go a lot higher in the draft. I think a lot of people might think. So in my mind, it's kind of hard for me to put him at that upper echelon again. I think on the second team, Max Ahanichor has been getting some more looks from a lot of NFL insiders and guys who are kind of suddenly turning an eye to what he offers on the offensive line. I think he is somebody that could definitely break into that second team. That's probably not as hot of a take as Jaron Hamilton or Kyson Brown, but Max Ahanichor I definitely could see on that second team this year.
Luke, I'm right there. I'm right there with you Ahanichor. I think he's going to make the second team. I think Leavitt and Tyson are kind of the consensus between us of making all Big 12 first team. But like you said, Luke, I have Shimon Mateer and Maxi Ahanichor making the second team. Ahanichor, if he can stay healthy, that is the biggest thing for him. He had a surgery on his shoulder back in January. I just talked to him today. He said he's feeling 110%. So if he can stay healthy and stay on the field for all 12 or however many games they play this year, I think he'll make a push for that.
Why isn't he 150%? That's what I'm wondering. Yeah. Gosh. But first team, Jordan Tyson's a lock with a bullet. Sam Leavitt, you can first or second, somewhere in there. We'll see. I'm going to maybe say first. Shimon Mateer is going to at least be a second team all-conference player. He was last year. Max Ahanichor got to be up there. Whenever you have a great team, offensive linemen tend to get rewarded. He's an NFL upside guy. Joaquin, I think Kyson Brown is going to need to have a lot more rushing yards than you said there for him to get to the second team all-conference status in the Big 12, because there's going to be some really good performances out there. So yeah, I'm going to stick with those four guys. Also, Jaron Hamilton, that is a reach. I would say he's got to have a lot more stats to be a first, second teamer. You do get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt on a great team, right? Which ASU has a chance to have. And so maybe Ben Coleman or somebody else, Josh Atkins or somebody has a chance to pop in there and surprise us with the second team mention. I think you'll see a bunch of honorable mentions though for ASU this year.
Yeah, I also have on my first team Sam Leavitt and Jordan Tyson. Those are the only two guys I have for first team. As far as second team, I also have Shimon Mateer and Maxi Ahanichor. Chris, like you said, O-linemen tend to get rewarded, and just on that right side, there's a lot more security and kind of familiarity on the right side as opposed to everything else happening with the offensive line. So I think that combined with just the way he's been playing and I predict he will play this upcoming year. I think that'll lead to him being a second team all-conference guy along with Shimon Mateer. All right, now ASU's defense has looked very strong this preseason camp. They're returning almost everybody, and they've just looked very good, especially at that Camp T scrimmage. That one sticks out to me the most. So with that, who will lead ASU in sacks and tackles for loss, and why?
So, Gabby, it's funny that you mentioned the word strong, because to me, the guy who's going to lead in both categories is the guy that Kenny Dillingham can't stop raving about how strong he's been all fall camp. I'm going to go with CJ Fight. He transformed his body over the offseason. He's taken a step up as a leader. He looked phenomenal in the Camp T scrimmage that you mentioned. There was one play that stood out to me where he had a tackle for loss in the backfield of Kanye Udo on the goal line where it just looked like he didn't even have to try to do that. I have him leading in both stats.
Yeah, so I have the same player leading both stats, but it's not CG5. I have Justin Woodley. Kenny Dillingham has raved all year about his ability to shed weight, become more athletic, more agile, while becoming the second strongest on the team. So I think he has a strong chance to lead the team in TFLs, which he did last year, and then take that role of leading the team in sacks.
Fight could definitely be a game wrecker. I think he's often going to draw double teams and triple teams, which might hold down his sack numbers, especially as a defensive tackle. I've gone with Clayton Smith, the freak on the defense. Not my words. That's the words of The Athletic. He is an exceptional athlete and is considered to be, according to national media, probably one of the best athletes on that defense. He led the team in sacks last year. I think he could lead them in sacks again. I've gone with Justin Watley to lead them in tackles for a loss. I think he's probably their best run defender on the edge. And, that feels like a meat and potatoes answer for me. I think those are kind of two obvious guys, but definitely I don't want to overthink that. I think those two could definitely lead in those categories.
Luke, we've just been on the same wavelength the entire night. I also have Clayton Smith leading the team in sacks. I think he actually might have a chance to make a push for the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year because he looks very athletic on that edge. I don't know if there is anywhere where we can see how many sacks or quote unquote sacks, since you can't touch the quarterback in preseason camp, but it is definitely way up there. And then tackles for loss, I have Justin Wadley as well. He shed 15 pounds while keeping his lean and strong muscle. They have the ability to put him on the outside or inside if they really need to. He's played both throughout preseason camp. He's thrived mostly on the edge, but just having that dual threat of being able to play anywhere on the offensive or on the defensive line, I think will be very beneficial for him.
We've seen the guys play into the backfield the most be the two guys that you just mentioned there. I think Clayton Smith and Justin Watley have played into the backfield more than anybody, been around the quarterback. It's tough to say which one of them is more likely than the other to lead in sacks or tackles for loss. I'm going to guess Clayton Smith sacks, Justin Watley tackles for loss, sort of a hedge. I think the CJ fight is certainly more athletic and going to be more disruptive. But also it's really hard to do that from an interior position, and especially when he might not even be on the field on third downs a lot of the time. But I think he's a more dynamic player. If there's a sleeper, total sleeper shot in the dark, it's going to be Albert Smith if he gets an opportunity on third downs. Boy, that guy's got some twitch on the edge. He's got a different caliber of speed, and he might sneak up on you if he gets an opportunity early in the season and win sub package opportunity. I'm going to ask Gabby along with her answer, and then the rest of you in order, over or under 8.5 sacks for the person that you said would lead ASU in sacks.
I'm going to say over. And I have Justin Watley leading in both sacks and TFLs. Jake, you mentioned he lost a bunch of weight. And he's been in the spring and through last year, he was much more of an extroverted guy. He was almost like Jacob Kangaika, where if you were on the field, if you were near the defensive lineman, you could hear him. He was a big energy guy. At the teacup at halftime, he came off the field doing the BTA. He was a very kind of loud guy who projected his energy. This fall, he's been much more quiet and kind of more of a mental or like leading by example guy, I would say. And I talked to Dyron Reynolds about halfway through camp, and he said, it's been really good to see him emotionally and kind of mentally maturing. He's still a leader. He's just leading more by example in a quiet way rather than feeling like he needs to be very loud and extroverted about it. So I think that kind of mental change for him combined with, he did lose 15 pounds and he already was a very strong player coming into this year. So I think all of those things will work really well in tandem. And he's going to lead the team in those categories. But Jacob, your prediction on that over-under?
Yeah, Gabby, I'm going to go with the under. ASU had nobody with over 5 sacks last season. I think 8.5 is a pretty high number. I think that this is going to be a phenomenal defense, one of the best in the conference, but I think it'll be much more of a group effort than like one guy standing out with that many sacks.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree. I think 8.5 that'd be almost a sack and a half a game to beat that over with 9 sacks. So I think taking the over on that is kind of hard to take, just being that the team that's going to be a group effort, the whole D line is going to produce. So I'm going to take the under on Justin Watley, 8.5 sacks.
Yeah, Chris, that's a tough line. I think if you made it 7.5, I probably would have taken over. I think Smith could absolutely get around 8, but 8.5 is kind of stretching it. I mean, he had 28 pressures last year. He only had 4 sacks, 1 out of every 7. If he bumps his pressures number up, it's up like 35, gets 1 out of every 5. That's 7 sacks. Some slight improvements, but 8 is a lot. I don't think he's going to hit that.
Okay.
Luke, I like that you brought up the pressures because I think I'm going to take the over. I think Clayton Smith is going to finish with 9 sacks. I think there were so many times where he came just a fingertip within a sack. And the amount of work that he's put in this offseason, I think, will come to fruition throughout the season. I think because the defensive line is so deep and everyone's so talented that there's not really going to be a lot of options to double team. We talked about they're going to double team CJ Fight. There's only 5 guys on the offensive line, and if you're rushing 4, you can only double team 1 guy.
Yeah, I think it's going to be 8 sacks for the leader. I think Joaquin, you need to check your math a little bit with the 1.5. But I don't. If Clayton Smith or Justin Watley has 9 or more sacks, I think that would be a pretty impressive feat. They are better, but that's a big number, and I do think that it's going to be mostly a group effort from a pass rush standpoint this season.
Kind of on a similar note, who will lead ASU in tackles and why?
For me, I'm going to go with another hot take here. I feel like that's been kind of my theme throughout this show. For me, I think that Jordan Crook is going to lead ASU in tackles. I think that he has taken that leap. Every time that I watch AJ Cooper's linebacker group, Jordan Crook is going first in the drill. He's leading by example. He's on the leadership council. He just seems like he's moving at a different speed compared to everybody else out there on that defense. And I think he's going to be flying over the field and lead the team in tackles.
Yeah, so this might be a shocker, but actually the exact same player, Jordan Crook. I mean, I've been highlighting him all offseason. I know he made a spot in Chris Cartman's Hot 11, so I think he has a high chance to be out there running sideline to sideline on the field, making tackles and competing for that chance of leading the team in tackles.
This is unbelievable. The one time I go out on a limb and say it's going to be Jordan Crook, I get Jacob Brooks and Joaquin Rodriguez stealing my bit before he even gets to me. I think if Rouser plays every single game, he's going to lead the team in tackles. I have my doubts he's going to play every single game. So that's why I went with Crook. Just like Jacob and Joaquin have been saying, Crook has been, the word I can describe him is twitchy. He seems to always be like agitated and ready to hit something. I think he's licking his chops ready for the season to come. I could see him definitely leading this team in tackles.
Jacob, it's definitely not a hot take. I am going to go Keyshawn Elliott. I'm not going to go Jordan Crook. I think Jordan Crook's going to have a lot of TFLs and tackles at the line, but I think Keyshawn Elliott is going to finish with the more overall tackles. I think a lot of people forget that he played a lot of last season injured, and his successor, Caleb McCullough, did really well in his spot, and I think Keyshawn Elliott is going to do a lot better in that spot. I think if he can stay healthy, play all of the games this season, which I think he will, as the mic and the leader of the defense, I think he's going to be able to see the field very well.
Yeah, I agree. Keyshawn Elliott was on pace early in the season to having a 100 tackle season, but then he was averaging 8-9 tackles a game, got hurt, missed a game or two, and then he wasn't really quite the same for a lot of the second half of the season. So I'm going to go Keyshawn Elliott. Think he might get to 100 if he's healthy enough the whole way, but it's going to be close probably between Elliott, Rouser, and Crook. Those are, I think, a clear-cut top grouping, and you're going to see a lot of gang tackling, rallying to the football, 2 or 3 helmets around the ball. This is going to be a physical and fast ASU defense that fans will see from the outset.
Yeah, I have Keyshawn Elliott as the tackle leader as well. He's returning from last year and in a linebacker room where he was, I guess, supposed to be better than Caleb McCullough, and Caleb McCullough's numbers were already really good. It felt like every time I was, we edit our post-game highlights, and every time I would go in and ASU was on the defensive side of the ball, especially that first half of the season, like you said, Chris, every time I was including a tackle in my highlights that I was editing, there was always a 44 right there. So that's just kind of something that I guess I remember, and amongst other reasons. But I'm with you, Chris and Jake. I think it'll be Keyshawn Elliott, the leader of that linebacker room. He's a veteran presence on this team as well. So yes, I'm saying Keyshawn Elliott. All right, next one, who will lead ASU in interceptions and why?
For me, I have Javen Robinson. He obviously had the most memorable interception of last season, arguably, with his pick against BYU. He's known for being a ball hawk. Kenny Dillingham has raved about how him and Keith Abney as a duo have leveled up this offseason, and I think that Javen's going to be the more ball hawk of the two of them, and I think he's going to lead the team in interceptions.
Yeah, so I have Keith Abney, actually. Kenny Dillingham talked about how he put on 10 pounds of muscle this past offseason, got in stronger. I think it's a chance for him to jam plays at the line, contest more balls. So I have Keith Abney to lead the team in interceptions.
I have Alford on the back end, the 100-yard landlord. I think we're going to see a fair amount of games this season where teams are trying to push the ball deep downfield late in games. That's kind of where safeties can come over and pick off those passes. So I have Xavier Alford.
I'm right there with Joaquin, with Keith Abney. You talked about how he added 10 pounds to his frame. He's going to be able to jam receivers at the line a lot easier. I think he had problems last year of down the field throws. He got burned on a couple of them. I think teams are going to try to exploit that. And I think Abney, with the work that he's put in through the offseason, is going to show them how much work he put in.
Great point by Luke. I think teams are going to have to try to pump the ball down the field against ASU in the second half of games, which is going to create opportunistic chances there. And I'm going to go with Xavier Alford. I did also last year. He was a little bit shy of what I anticipated. I think we'll get 3 or 4 interceptions. Keith Abney probably get 2 or 3 interceptions, and Jamin Robinson also right there. Those are the top 3 guys for sure.
Yeah, I have Xavier Alford as well. I mean, 100-yard landlord. Guess that's got to be his nickname for a reason, and I think he's going to prove that, especially this season. Next one is Brian Ward has a team goal of 40 sacks and 30 takeaways. What do we think ASU's final total in each of those categories is going to be?
Yeah, I don't think that ASU is going to exactly hit that goal. I think that's a little bit ambitious given the team last year had 24 sacks, 16 interceptions, and 7 fumble recoveries. I think this year the numbers will go up. Brian Ward has said in one of his availabilities at Camp Tonazona that he thinks this is the best defense that he's ever had. I think ASU will get to 37 sacks and 26 takeaways.
Yeah, so I have the defense not reaching that goal, that lofty goal that only 2 teams were able to reach last year in Texas and Notre Dame. So I have an increase in both sacks and interception. I have from 24 to 35 in sacks, and then from 23 to 30 takeaways.
I have 38 sacks and 23 takeaways. Again, I'm a little bit concerned about they will definitely pick off more passes. I think their fumble numbers could even go down. I just have doubts about who's going to force those fumbles. Shamari Simmons did all that last year. He's gone. The sack numbers definitely bumping up. I'm a big believer in what the pass rush has put in, all the work they've applied this offseason. I think it could translate come Saturdays.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. I have them finishing with 40 sacks. I think they're going to reach the sack goal, but I think the takeaways, they're only going to finish with 26, and I think 20 of those are going to be interceptions. Luke, you mentioned how often teams are going to have to throw the ball down the field, and I think there's going to be a lot of guys that, like we said, Xavier Alford, Keith Abney, Jamin Robinson, maybe even Miles Rouser. We saw the linebackers get in the passing game, and Caleb McCullough pick off a couple passes. So I think they're going to reach the sack goal, but they're going to be just a few takeaways short.
My counterpoint to you guys, Luke and Jake, really would be one of the biggest ways that you get takeaways is by playing into the backfield around the quarterback. Sacks, strip sacks, tackles for loss. That's where a lot of those things tend to occur. So I think with more quarterback under duress, there's going to be more of those opportunities. I think ASU is going to have more in both categories, but be a little bit under those very lofty aspirations. As Joaquin correctly said, only 2 teams did it last season. Only one of Brian Ward's teams have ever done it. I think that ASU will end up with about 35 sacks and around 28 takeaways.
Yeah, those are some pretty lofty numbers. When you sent that, I was kind of just, I guess, looking at it in front of me, and I was like, those are some lofty expectations. So I'm going to say no on both of them. I have them at 33 sacks, which is still a good number, but 40 sacks is a high number. I mean, you're averaging like between 3 and 4, some sort of decimal per game in the regular season. That's a lot. So takeaways, I'm also going to say no. I have them at about 28. All right. We did this for offense, but which defensive players will be all Big 12 first or second team?
Yeah, Gabby, I have Xavier Alford and CJ Fight making the Big 12 first team. And then I think for the Big 12 second team, I have Jordan Crook, Keyshawn Elliott, and Keith Abney. I think that this is going to be an amazing defense all around. And like we kind of mentioned with the offense, I think they'll get a little bit of that one of the better teams in the conference boost when it comes to these awards.
Yeah, so for the first team, I have Xavier Alford as well and Justin Watley to make the first team. Then on the second team, I have Clayton Smith and Jordan Crook to make that. I think Jordan Crook's going to be a big impact player at that linebacker, where I know me and Jacob Brooks were high on him in the being a player that you could watch. So I think Jordan Crook has a chance to step up.
Yeah, it feels like Joaquin and I have been following this defense almost every practice we've covered, but this is a legit, very good unit. I have both safeties making the teams. I have Alford making first team and Rouser making second team. I think one of the corners could easily make it. I didn't put them down. I think CJ Fight makes first team. I think Clayton Smith makes second team. And I think Jordan Crook makes second team. I think this is a very good unit. I have 5 guys making it. You could get 6, 7, 8 guys on this team could all make the defensive first or second team all Big 12.
As someone who's grown up in the Valley for 20 years, I can confidently say, and I know Chris will say this too, this is the best defense at ASU in a very long time. I have them getting 5 guys on the first team. I have Clayton Smith, Xavier Alford, Keyshawn Elliott, and CJ Fight. 4. And then I have Keith Abney and Jordan Crook making the second team defense. I think this will be one of the best defenses in the country.
Look, 2013, I've talked a lot about that defense. Will Sutton, Carl Bradford, they had, I think, 6 all-conference players in the Pac-12. Very difficult conference that year, probably even tougher than the Big 12. I think it was first in the Sagarin rankings. And so this defense is going to have a bunch of guys littering the first and second team defenses. I'm going to go with Alford, Keyshawn Elliott, CJ Fight, and Keith Abney on the first team. And then second team, I think Jordan Crook has a very good chance. Justin Watley, right there, very good chance. Miles Rouser, very good chance. Jalen Robinson, very good chance. I think we're going to be talking about this as one of the best defenses in modern history and one of the best defenses in the country by the end of the year.
All right, I have 6 guys total amongst the first and second team, 3 each. First team, I have Xavier Alford, and then I also have Justin Watley. I don't know why. I feel I'm really high on him this season, obviously because he's a good player, but part of it is just like kind of a gut feeling. I feel like part of the thing with these predictions is, yeah, you can look at stats all you want, and those can help. But part of it for me is just gut feeling. I don't know why about Justin Watley. And then I have Keyshawn Elliott on that first team as well. And then second team, Miles Rouser, Keith Abney, and Jordan Crook. So, yeah, I mean, this defense has been very impressive all throughout camp. One of the best that ASU has ever seen, definitely. So it'll be really interesting to see who all makes that team and just how the defense as a whole does this season. Now kind of into the more, I guess, broad game-specific predictions. What game do you think is the biggest one on ASU's schedule?
Yeah, Gabby, I think the biggest game on the schedule is going to be going on the road against Iowa State, a rematch of the Big 12 championship from last year. Iowa State, they're currently ranked. It's probably going to be ASU's toughest road game. And based off of what we think we know about all the teams on ASU's schedule right now, probably the last super tough game on the back end of that regular season schedule. And I think that it's going to be a tough one, but I do think ASU would get the win in that matchup still.
Yeah, so as big as that Iowa State game I think it's going to be, I have the biggest game on the schedule being when they host Texas Tech. I think it's a tale of 2 teams. You have Arizona State, who retained almost their 80% of their roster from last year. They lost 1 guy on defense, a handful of players on offense. Then you have Texas Tech, on the other hand, who brought in 22 players via the transfer portal with the help of NIL and West Texas billionaire Cody Campbell's oil company. So I think it's a tale of 2 teams, and it's going to be a good clash to see what the quote-unquote new era of college football comes through with new NIL, new team, or if the old-style Kenny Dillingham roster of retaining players, retaining coaches comes through.
I also have the Iowa State game, just like Brooks. I don't think Iowa State is a top team they play this season. I don't even think they might be top 3 based on what we saw from them in Dublin. But the game is going to be in Iowa. It's going to be November. It's going to be really cold. ASU is 0-4 at games where it's under 41 degrees at kickoff since 2004. Iowa State is also a gritty team that even when their talent level might not be the highest, they always seem to find a way to 9-8 wins under Matt Campbell. This is a team that will gut out wins late in the season. I think it's going to be a big prove-it game for the culture that Dillingham has established to go on the road, especially if ASU is kind of towing that line where 1 loss could knock them out of the Big 12 championship.
I definitely agree with you guys about Iowa State's game. I think it'll be a big game, but I think the biggest one is going to be the Utah game. It's their 6th game of the season. It's going to be on the road in one of the toughest places to play in the country. Like so many people have said, I think it's going to be very telling because Utah is also bringing in Devin Dampier from New Mexico. So I think I'm expecting Devin Dampier to take a jump, and facing that tough offensive line is going to be very hard for this pass rush.
The games always become more important when you're in the hunt late, but for ASU to be able to get there, it can't lose 2 of its first 3 Big 12 games, which is a very difficult start between Baylor, then on the road, then hosting TCU, then going to Utah. And I think that Utah game I have circled because it's a very difficult place to play. And ASU is either going to be in the driver's seat at that point, 3-0, 2-1, probably leading the way. 1-2, got a lot of problems. Iowa State only becomes the big game that you guys are talking about if ASU is able to be 2-1 or 3-0 at that point in the season. That's why I'm going to go with Utah, especially because I consider Utah to be the sort of sneaky team that could be right at the top of the conference at the end of the year. And if ASU has losses to, let's say, 2 of the other top teams, including Utah and Baylor or somebody else, that would be a knock if it ends up being a tie at the end of the year.
I agree with you, Chris and Jake. I also have Utah one. Jake, you mentioned that's an extremely difficult place to play. It's towards the beginning of their Big 12 slate. And Chris, like you mentioned, that game can decide a lot of things as to what matters moving ahead in the season and what the rest of those conference games implications are. And I think if you just look at the 2 games before, you're on the road for your Big 12 opener this season at Baylor, a team that's supposed to be good as well. And then a short week, you come back and play TCU. And I think that game is kind of one to look out for too, just because of the short week and coming off of a road trip and playing a team that's supposed to be very good. I don't think it'll be a problem game though. But then that Utah game immediately following, going back on the road, you had a short week before. It's a hard place to play, and it can just mean a lot for how the rest of the season goes, depending on how the prior games before it go. So I also have Utah as my biggest game of this upcoming season. All right, a couple more here. What are the 2 to 3 keys to the season for ASU to maximize its potential, which is obviously very high, and match that potential with the very high expectations going into this season? Jacob, go ahead.
Yeah, Gabby, I'm going to be quick with these. My 2 biggest keys. Number 1 is going to be Sam Leavitt stepping up to the plate with those early preseason Heisman expectations that have been placed upon him. He talked about earlier today how he's been trying to improve on his footwork and the quick game passing. And I think if he does that, that's going to be critical. But number 2, something that's out of his control. I think the other big key, we've talked about it all episode, is going to be Ben Coleman at that center spot. If those 2 things can hit, I think ASU is going to be clicking.
Yeah, so for my first thing, I have Ben Coleman at that center spot. I think him jumping into that role is a big step for anybody replacing the shoes of an all-conference center in Leif Faltanu. But I think my second big key is the special teams. I think last year the special teams wasn't something Coach Kenny Dillingham could rely on in big moments. So I think it forced him to go for some things maybe he wouldn't have if he could have trusted. So I think the ability to lean on that special teams unit is going to be a key factor in ASU's success this season.
I have 2 things that Dillingham's talked about a lot in the offseason. The middle 8, they did a really good job in the middle 8 last year. The last 4 minutes of the first half, the first 4 minutes of the second half, those are crucial stretches when you want to win close games. And I can imagine the Sun Devils are going to be in a lot of close games this year. And just to the tune of that, it's going to be closing out these close games and making the winning plays at the end. Multiple times last season, ASU needed to come back and win a game and or hold on to a lead inside the last 3 minutes. Collars were getting tight all around Mountain America Stadium, and they still were able to go undefeated at home. I think if they want to continue that incredible mark of not losing a game at Mountain America, they have to close out games in the end and also win the middle 8.
I think for me, the number one thing is going to be ball security. They only turned the ball over 9 times last year and had the 6th best turnover margin in the country. That allowed them to really dictate how games went. That's why they did so well in the middle 8 last year. So I think protecting the ball is going to be very big. And then the second thing is going to be protecting Sam Leavitt. The offensive line, there's been some questions, but I think if they can give him enough time to sit in the pocket, go over all of his reads, I think they'll be very successful, because a couple times last year, Leavitt had to dash out of the pocket a little too early, try to make something happen, and that oftentimes led to ill-advised throws.
Everybody knows turnover margin, number 1 stat in football, determining wins, losses. Put that aside. Injuries, you got to stay healthy. Put that aside. I think that Sam Leavitt's evolution is the most important thing for this team. He's going to have to take his completion percentage up from a 62% into the high 60s, be comfortable with getting the ball out of your hands, cycling through progressions when you read coverage from the top down, take what's there. No need to scramble too much. No need to try to put it all on your own legs or on your back and try to make that special play. Get out of there. If you need to throw the ball away, throw it away. Don't force it. No interceptions. Your defense is great. If you can do those things, he's going to be a first rounder. ASU is going to be back in the Big 12 championship game. Second thing I think is that center QB exchange and that relationship. Ben Coleman can't have things where he puts the ball on the ground in key situations because he's feeling that mug pressure and he's trying to get his hands up to anticipate a blitz and on third downs or things of that nature. Make Sam Leavitt have to go reach and jump and do things that knock the rhythm. If you're able to do both of those things at a high level with that center QB exchange and Sam Leavitt's growth, ASU is going to have a great season.
Yeah, I have Sam Leavitt as definitely the biggest key for just the entire team this year as well. I touched on it earlier, but no one running back, no one player on offense is going to make up for Cam Scadaboo's production. And if they want to have that same kind of offensive production, it's going to start with Sam Leavitt. He's got to take his numbers up. He's a guy who very clearly wants it. He's one of those guys who Kenny Dillingham has kind of said he's wired differently just in the way he approaches things and the way he wants things. So I think Sam Leavitt and his production is going to be definitely the biggest thing for this ASU team this year. And then Luke, I also had the middle eight. I think part of what made last season so magical for so many ASU fans was the fact that a lot of those games that they were winning at home were very close. And if you want to win those close games, you have to win that middle eight. And that's something Kenny Dillingham harped on so often last season. And I can't imagine it'll be much different this season. But that UCF game in particular, when things were getting kind of close at the end, in the press conference after, I just remember like he was saying middle eight. And I think if ASU wants to have the same kind of winning record it did last year, this team is better than last year on paper. But so much of what happened with those games last year, those very close games, I think was a little bit of luck. So to, I guess, maximize its chances of not having to rely on things like that and keep more things in its control, ASU is definitely going to have to really focus on that middle eight as a point of emphasis to make sure those close games, maybe there's not as many of them and they have a little bit more control as to the final outcome of their games. So two more here. Prediction. What will ASU's final regular season record be? This is a big one. Jacob, go ahead.
Yeah, Gabby, I'm going to keep this quick and kind of combine what I think your last two questions are. I think ASU will go 11-1. I think the only loss will be the Texas Tech game at home. And I think ASU will make it back to the Big 12 championship game and make the college football playoff.
Yeah, so I have the exact same record prediction, 11-1 with the home loss to Texas Tech, winning the Big 12 championship and earning another college football playoff berth.
I have ASU going undefeated in the regular season and then losing the Big 12 championship to Texas Tech before making their way back to the college football playoff.
I have them going 10-2 with losses to Baylor and Utah, but I think they're going to be able to make the comeback back to the Big 12 chip. Both of those teams play Kansas State. I think Kansas State is going to beat them, and I think ASU is going to beat Kansas State in the Big 12 championship to go back to the college football playoff.
Luke, did you say 12-0 in the regular season?
Yeah, I did. I thought about it a lot, and I'm pretty confident in that pick.
Jacob and Joaquin, 11-1 in the regular season.
Yes, sir. I'm standing on it.
Yeah, I believe.
Okay. Hey, I thought about 11-1. I really did, but I'm going to go 10-2. Things are going to happen usually. Not saying that this year something's going to happen, but usually things are going to happen. I think this is a great football team, and it will be back in the Big 12 championship. I'm going to have to evaluate the matchup to have a decision against some mythical. We don't know who the team is and haven't watched them play yet. So I'm not going to pick that, but I do think ASU is going to get back there and have a really great season.
Okay, Chris, don't call me crazy. I'm with Jacob and Joaquin. I'm going to say 11-1 as well, and
Wow.
I'm going to have that lone loss being to Utah. I think that's going to be a really big game, and like you said, kind of maybe not a sleeper pick, but a team that is poised to be very good in this conference. And that's just a very tough place to play. Okay, one last thing, very quick fire. Each person name ASU's strongest to least strong offensive and defensive positions. Very quick. Jacob, go ahead.
I would say the strongest position on offense will be quarterback. After that, I will go with wide receiver number 2, and then I will go tight end number 3, running back number 4, O-line number 5. On the defense, I think every position's close. They're all in the same tier, but I'd say if they're healthy, safety number 1. After that, I'll go linebacker, corner, D-line, nickel.
Yeah, so on offense, I have tight end being 1, wide receiver 2, quarterback 3, and then running back being 4, and then O-line being the I don't want to say worst, but the biggest question heading into the season. Then defensively, I have defensive line being the best, linebacker 2nd, safety cornerback being 3rd, then at safety nickel position. I think losing Shamari Simmons, your one replacement on the defensive end, makes it a question heading into the season.
Offensively, I have the running backs 1st, I have the wide receiver 2nd, the quarterbacks 3rd, the tight ends 4th, and the offensive line 5th. On defense, I have the safeties as the clear-cut number 1, and the 2 through 5 are all very interchangeable in my opinion. I have defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, and then nickel.
For me, number 1 is going to be tight end on the offense. Number 2 is going to be quarterback. Number 3, wide receiver. Number 4, running back. And number 5, offensive line. And then on the defensive side, I think the linebackers are going to be the best position, and then followed by the defensive line, the safeties, the corners, and the nickels.
I'm going to go tight end, quarterback, wide receiver, offensive line, and running back, even though running back's good. And defensively, safety, linebacker, D-line, corner, nickel would be my order. But gosh, there's really no weakness on the defense.
All right, for offense, I have quarterback, tight end, wide receiver, running back, offensive line. And then defense, safety, defensive line, linebacker, corner, nickel. All right. If you've made it this far with us, we thank you for listening. We're almost an hour and a half in now, but hopefully you have some of our faces down by now. We really hope you enjoyed the second installment of the Sun Devil Source video podcast. As always, brought to you by Jones Auto Centers. For Sun Devil Source, Gabby Chernoff, Chris Cartman, Jacob Brooks, Joaquin Rodriguez, Luke Lendler, and Jake Sloan. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.